Okay, so tonight's call is called Breathe Easier. So I am assuming at this point that everyone in the room is a singer.
Mhm.
Is that correct? All right. And so let's talk for just a second about, alrighty, what are the challenges that either you personally are facing or you just, these are the things that you're aware of and dealing with in regards to breathing. So it's kind of like, let's establish our wish list for this evening. And I'm going to take some notes while you chat to me about them. So who would like to start? Yes, Diane, go.
I'll make it easy. So I have some trouble with what I feel like is and what has been I've been coached as breath support of just getting to the ends of phrases, taking a big enough breath to get to the end of my phrases. But also I've been having an issue for a bit now with thinking is just singing too much vocally from my throat. So I end up getting really hoarse. Even just with long conversations, I end up losing my voice or just getting really hoarse.
Yeah.
So that's been a big concern of mine lately.
Yeah, I'm hoping that as we go deeper into the conversation tonight, some light bulbs go off for you, and suddenly you go, oh, because
Yeah.
I'm hoping that this conversation will change your life. That's
Good.
okay. Kathy, what's on your radar?
Um, I kind of felt that similar to Diane, where I wanted to be doing it right where it feels free. Like I feel like it's a clear tone and it feels comfortable when I'm singing, as opposed to thinking about mechanically what I'm doing, where I
Yeah,
just and not using my throat, using
yeah, not feeling that tension or that sort of jammed up feeling in the throat as you're singing. All right, Maura.
I can definitely relate to what Diane and Kathy were both saying. I think I do tend to fall into habits of like taking really big pressurized breaths
Mm-hmm.
that then kind of set me up for failure throughout the phrase where like I use all the air out. I'm like relying on my air in a
Yeah,
way that
yeah.
am I'm trying not to think about it too much. I think that's something that Kathy was saying, like really thinking too much, I think, about it. So
Yeah,
yeah.
I think well, as we start talking about it, I mean, you've been working with me for just a little while, so you've got a little bit of information behind your process right at the moment. I would suggest that for a while, especially after you all have this conversation with me, that there's definitely thinking going on in the process. And for me as a singer, really, it's basically only my brain. I feel nothing else, but I definitely am aware of my focus of attention and how do I maintain that control. So for a little while, especially if as you're making a transition to these mechanics that are, you'll start to feel tonight as I walk you through some of these breathing exercises. Um, it's going to be a little bit of curiosity for the mind while you change over. All right. So it's like more like it's the relaxation around that thought process. Yeah. So, okay, cool. How about Margaret? Why don't you weigh in coming in from New Zealand? What's on your radar?
Um, Probably the biggest thing for me is the what I've heard you call the passaggio,
Yep,
and how to navigate these places.
yep, the
Um,
transitional areas. Yep,
yeah, and
okay.
I've just had a lot of fun playing with it and trying to do it. I found combining it with Alexander technique, sort of
Yep.
non doing, then something happens, and so I'm sort of got all my paints of color out, and it'll be really lovely to
Yes.
have this hour and a half to start to choose more
And maybe
couple of-
have a deeper understanding too
Yeah.
of objective. Yes. So Margaret and I have just had a initial consultation. So she's had a little tiny conversation with me about these mechanics as well. And she's in New Zealand where one of my certification grads is. So we're tag teaming here to see if we can assist her as well. So Sharon, how about you weigh in a little bit on the breathing process? And I just saw you for a 30-minute private last weekend. So you've probably been,
Good.
yep.
So I came into Deborah with concerns much like the rest of everybody else. I was running out of breath in between phrases. And I was running out of breath before our written in times to take a breath, and I'm still trying to learn those mechanics a little bit better and still trying to catch on, especially when the song is going fast and
Yep, yep.
still trying to take a breathe well when there's not a lot of time to do that.
Right.
And I'm looking basically to reinforce the things that we talked about on Saturday and
Okay.
pick up some new tips and
Okay, awesome.
build on what we learned.
Okay, awesome.
What
All
I
right, good. Well, and I'm glad to have you all with me tonight. And I would say to you that the singing process, and I'll go ahead and have you all mute right now just for the purpose of the recording, and then but you can unmute yourself as you need to and want to ask questions. Just give me a sign and I'll pause. So the first thing I kind of want to say to you all is that between the sort of things that have been said to you as a singer along the way, if you've been coached or you've had a teacher, how many of you, all just by a raise of hands, how many have taken voice lessons? Like you've actually had a voice teacher at one time. So you've got information in the mind, okay, that's based on typically an airflow system. This is the idea that the air goes into the body and then somehow I'm going to utilize my air as I sing a phrase, and that air is going to help that phrase move out into the room and project out into the space in front of me. My sound is being propelled on that air. And as we kind of go deeper into these mechanics a little bit tonight, I think you'll start to have, like I said to Diane, some light bulb moments about, oh, well, maybe there's some thoughts that we have been wired to think that, first of all, would not be how we would learn how to sing in Italy. And I think that's the first one, is that the Italians taught voice differently 200 years ago, and they to this day teach voice differently than we do on this side of the pond. All right, so I'm bringing you, in many cases, completely new information as to what the objective is and how you're thinking about it. So what I want to do is just give you a little bit of history first so that we can set the mind up to be curious, because I think that anytime we're trying to change something in ourselves and change our results, it's that old Mark Twain quote that says, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. So it's, we get into that loop mainly because either someone has said this is how it works, or we're being reinforced in those mechanics as how it works. And I know that I'm already going to be bringing you something that's very different than most people are accustomed to. So the history of this is that 1800 to 1840 was the time period where Bel Canto was the standard of Italian fundamental voice training. This is how they trained singers in that time period. And Manuel Garcia, who was the founder, was a scientist. It wasn't just like some guy came out and started teaching voice. It was like this guy studied the physiology, brought singers in from around Italy and around Europe. His son, Manuel Garcia II, developed something called the laryngoscope, which is the tiny little angled mirror that they still use today in ENT's offices to look. If you ever go in with a sore throat or something and they take a little mirror and stick it back there and look down, that's Manuel Garcia's invention that lets the doctor see the vocal folds from above. And of course, now we've got higher technology and scoping and all of that stuff, which hopefully you'll never have to do. But it's interesting to me that these guys were scientists. And there's a little book called Hints, Hints, Hints on Singing, that is still available. You can find it. That is the book that Manuel Garcia, the founder of Bel Canto, wrote, where you see his mapping of the physiology and how he talks about it. And of course, the languaging from that time period is a little complicated for us to like go through the weeds, but it does exist. So one of the first things that we kind of want to get our head around is that between that time when the singing quality, if you think about, okay, if we were to turn on the radio and hear singers from 1800, what would we have heard? We would have heard virtually vibrato-less, completely accurate, clear, free, effortless tone controlled for up to 16 measures on one breath. Like, exactly, like what we want to be today, if you're in the world of a cappella for sure, what we want to have control is what they had 200 years ago. And so there's part of me, I'm considered what's called a direct line scholar. I can trace my lineage of voice teachers back 6 generations to the founder. And that's what makes my understanding so special in a way, because you know, the game of telephone being what it is, as people pass information across the decades, I've gone 200 years, I can trace it back 6 people, and those people to the first 3 that were really, really good singers, but also the teachers of this mechanic. So I think that becomes important because of what I'm about to talk to you about, all right? So what we have mainly been used to is something called, I'm going to call force. We take a big breath, we move that air. It's like we breathe in, and then, as you said, I'm trying to manage and sustain my breath across a phrase like Maura, and you know, I'm dealing with how that feels. So we get the feeling here, but also Sharon, like it doesn't always work. I can't make it through the whole phrase, you know, okay. When you speak, you can finish a sentence, yes? So another piece to start to be mindful of is when we talk, how many ever feel themselves go, oh, wait, I needed to take a breath before I finished answering you. We never do that. We never do that. The other thing we never do is we never start to say a sentence and try to push all our air out all of the very end. We're never forcing air out. We're never gasping for air in when we speak. So what I will say to you at the outset of tonight is you already all know how to do what I understand. You do it every single day of your life. But we just don't have the wiring in place to understand that how we breathe when we sing, when we speak, is actually relatable to how we breathe when we sing, and that it can be way easier for us to get the results that we're looking for. All right. So I'm going to start tonight. We're going to do some kinesthetic exercises. And then as we do them, there'll be moments where I'm going to have you sing behind the microphone. So you'll never necessarily be singing where you're exposed, but I'll have you be trying things behind the mic, and then you can talk to me about it. All right. But the first thing I want to take you to is the first exercise my teacher ever did with me in regards to the air. And I've done it with a couple of you already, so this will be a repeat. So I'm going to have you take your fingers like L's. You know, just make like these little L's. And I'm going to have you can stay seated, but I want you to put your fingers or your hands right on the rib cage, sort of at the base of the bra strap. And if there's a gentleman watching this video, would be, you want to be on bone when you do this, not on the waistline. So I'm going to have you exhale all your breath gently. And now I'm just going to ask you to inhale through your nose. Bravo. And you feel this kind of nice, gentle swinging open of the rib cage. You get a full sideways expansion. How many of you all felt that? Okay, bravo. So now exhale again. And this time just breathe in through the mouth. Bravo. And how many notice you start to get the forefingers moving and some kind of abdominal engagement. It could have felt like a little bit around the waistline, or you might have even felt it lower, but that there's a less of a sideways expansion on those ribs and more of a depth of breathing into the body that feels more abdominally focused. So how many notice that? Okay, bravo. So you can let the hands down for a moment. So there are essentially 3 schools of breathing in the world of singing. The first and the earliest is the Bel Canto breathing, all right? And it is going to be all very natural, open suspension, gentle. Like, go ahead and do this one more time. You won't be breathing through your nose when you do it, but for right now, go ahead and do that. So exhale, breathe in through the nose. And you feel that, you feel a complete expansion, but it doesn't feel overpressurized. You're not feeling like you've taken, now everybody just take a big breath. And you feel it start to come up. It starts to rise up and come up towards the throat. Okay, so now I'm gonna have you do it one more time. I won't make you do it a lot tonight because I'm not a big fan, but exhale again. Take a big breath for me. And notice there's a sensation right at the base of the throat with that big breath. Who felt that? You can feel it. Okay. So that's the immediate overpressurization of your vocal folds. You can relax and have a seat. So the overpressurization fundamentally is we've taken in too much air for the vocal folds to manage. This is a big one, right? Because the challenge and the thing that's interesting is with these bigger breaths that we are being either asked to take or are used to taking, it can be both, right? We get this overpressurization process. And then, like Sharon says, when we start to sing, we cannot make it through a phrase because the vocal folds are so overtaxed by the quantity of air in the lungs that they lose control of the air. And now you're out of air before you're done. This is crazy. Okay. This is like this. It's almost a setup, except it comes, no one teaches these mechanics, any breath mechanics. There's nobody out there that's trying to make it harder. Everyone's trying to make it easier and trying to explain it. But I think that when we don't quite understand vocal fold function, some of the things that are said will immediately exacerbate the problems. And then the problem is we then think we have a personal problem. That, well, if I was just a better singer, I would have a handle on this. If I just could, you know what I'm saying? And suddenly now we're impacting our emotional body and our mind and our capacity to even think with ease while we're trying to do what we love. This is a problem, okay? And that's partly why Debra Lynn's on a mission. I'm like, okay, let's fix this, all right? So I want to show you something about the brain because the brain's pretty brilliant. And then we'll talk about this 2 ways. So I'm going to have you exhale for me. Go ahead and put the fingers back there for a second. And now I'm going to tell you to breathe in through your mouth, but tell the air to go to your back. Just breathe into your back. Go. And notice that you got the sideways expansion again. Okay, so this is the weird science. This is weird science. Try it again. Exhale again. In case it's so you're basically telling your brain, okay, brain, I'm going to breathe towards my back. Here we go. And it was just a thought. Now, Kathy, did you feel that? Where you start to get more of the sideways expansion again. Bravo. So now you can relax the hands. The very first thing that he taught me back in 1989 is that there's 2 channels for the air to go into the lungs. And this is where it wasn't until COVID that I understood why. So when you breathe in through the nose, remember those long swabs, right, that they were using in the beginning of COVID that freaked us all out. Because we kind of have this idea that nasal passages go this way, and that brain was way close to where those swabs were. I'm like, oh, I'm not going to use one of those. I never actually did either. It wasn't until COVID, it wasn't until after COVID when I started like going, oh, this is why this works. My eldest son became a doctor and he's like, no, the nasal passages go straight back to the back of the throat. And so when they were doing the swab, that's what they were doing, is trying to get back to the back of the throat to get the sample. Well, it suddenly struck me, that's why when you take a nasal breath by itself, the air is directed to the back of the throat and essentially goes down the backside of the airway, even though there's only one airway. And so you get more of that expanded lower lobe of the lungs and the back lateral muscles opening up, all right? And then when you breathe in through the mouth, the faster path is on the front side of it. And so now we start to trigger more diaphragmatic action and more of that abdominal stuff on the front side, all right? Bel Canto figured out in the day, 200 years ago, that when the body was more aligned, which we'll be working with tonight with an alignment piece of this puzzle, when it was more aligned and the mechanics were more oriented towards the expansion of the lower ribs, that we could reinforce something called vocal fold closure. All right. So I want to ask you a couple questions about vocal folds. All right. And then you can unmute if you want to talk to me about this or answer. So do you know what the primary job of the vocal folds is in the body? What's the primary physiological purpose of their existence? And if you know the answer, because we've talked about it, don't say. Let's wait and let those that haven't actually had this conversation with me. Kathy? What's the primary physiological purpose of them in our
I
minds?
would think to vibrate.
Yeah, so we like think vibration or speech or to make tone or something that has to do with sound, all right? And what I like to share is that they actually have a far more important physiological function. Anybody in the room in medicine? Margaret, you're in the sort of releasing musculature body. Do you know what their primary purpose is?
No, I don't. I can't even picture where they are at, like where they what they
Yes,
look like in
what they
comparison.
look like. Okay, good. So this is good to have this conversation. So and then I'll say to you, if you go on YouTube and you look up the terminology ENT, which is ear, nose, and throat, ENT scoping of singers, you actually can see them if you don't mind looking at something like that, where the camera is looking at their function. It can be very helpful because they're essentially oriented this way. So in the body, they are here. If they're here together, they're oriented this way because when is the only time you ever have to hold your breath? For real.
Underwater.
Exactly right. So the primary purpose of your vocal folds is to save your life. I'm telling you, there's going to be light bulbs that go off, okay? So their primary function is to save your life. They are the last gate of the airway. They protect the airway. So yes, wow. Okay, so it gets better and better and better. It's literally like, oh my gosh. Okay, so here's what's even better, all right? They're always closed. They're always ready to sing. So, I'll ask this question too, like when you are singing, are the vocal folds open or closed? And Sharon, what would you say? Are they open or closed? You'll have to unmute, I think, because that word got you all muted.
When you're singing, the vocal cords have to be open because you're letting air out.
Well, you might be letting air out, but if those vocal folds are open, you're not making tone. You are letting air out. That is correct. That's absolutely correct. So so that, you know, most people will say, well, they're open or they're closed or they're open and closed. Okay, so open and closed is vibrato. If you've got a vibrato issue periodically that's showing up in your sound, it's them having that overpressurization effect causing their function to go like cattywampus. So and if you go to a scope and look at an ENT's camera shoot of a singer using the camera and being filmed, what you'll see is if they are actually vocalizing a note, you'll see vibrato. You'll see the vocal folds kind of going like this and opening in a kind of wave-like action, all right? But if you want clear, effortless tone, they have to be closed. And now it starts to get weird because they're always closed. And the only time they open, officially open, is to inspire. So if everybody exhales, you made the air go out. Now go ahead and breathe in. And now release. So there was a moment where you took the breath in, the air movement stopped, and then you had to let it go. Okay, when I say, okay, release. All right. When we talk, we just inspire. We take the air in and they close, and now we talk on top of their closure. And if we pause, it's weird, but if you pause while you're speaking, you don't exhale, they're still closed. So this is where it's weird science initially because you're like, but, okay, but the reality is, okay, we might be causing our own problems. And not because we intentionally are causing our own problems, but because we have this idea in our mind that we're supposed to add more sort of thrust and propulsion and energy and air to our equation in order to make that thing run. And all I'll say is they know how to run without you. We're going to try to feel that tonight, okay? So, this piece of the puzzle that I will always ask this question too is like, when you're singing, do you have to make every note you sing? Right? And the answer was, well, if I don't make the note, who's going to make the note? You know, like, of course I have to make every note. And there's those high notes. And then, was it Margaret? Were you the passaggio? Yes. So like passaggio, you know, I'm in my transition now and I'm struggling. So we'll talk about transition here in a sec. But there's this idea that I have to force these vocal folds to make my notes across this range. All right. So this is the other brain blower. Okay. So your vocal folds in your throat for all of you as females is a 1/2 inch long and a fingernail's width wide. And every note you sing is on that 1/2 inch. So now we go, could we possibly be adding too many hurricane force winds to the equation? And the answer is yes. That force of pressure, that upward thrust, that feeling of thrust is part of what's causing our challenges, okay? So let me walk you into, I want to walk into one exercise first, and then I'm going to walk you into how Pavarotti was trained to control his air. So I'm going to ask you to take a listen to these 2 notes. I'm going to start you with this exercise just to see if I can get you oriented here. So I'm going to play 2 notes and I'm going to play one at a time. I'm going to play the first one. All I want you to do is hear the note in your mind and then just breathe in through the mouth like you're going to sing the note, but don't sing the note. Okay, you're just setting up a space inside your mouth, okay? So here's the first one. Hang on, make sure I got enough volume here. Bravo, and release. And now breathe in for this note. All right, and so what do you notice from note number 1 to note number 2? Did something change or happen inside that you were aware of inside your head? Maura, what was that? What do you notice?
A lot of lift. And I've it's funny, I've done this with you before and I'm still I'm noticing such a huge difference in like lift from the first one to the second one.
From the
And I
first
was
one.
intentionally trying.
Yeah. Just to see. Well, so this is where, part of my, yes, I'm going to unwind some things in your mind about vocal fold function and how we're singing and why we are having the kinds of big problems we're having, so that I can help you relieve them and start to move in a different direction. But I'm also going to sort of help soothe the emotional body that's feeling less than adequate when one cannot control one's breath for a phrase or a note, and suddenly you're not able to do the job you're being asked to do. And it's hard for that not to feel like somehow there's a lack of ability in the body. And I'm basically saying that it's less about your lack of ability and more about the fact that those mechanics don't work. And I will say them that boldly. I've finally gotten brave enough to just say what I know. And so what I'm going to draw for you is, this is part of the magic head. So we'll have a couple magic head moments tonight. So what I want to show you is how brilliant the brain is. And if I can help you understand what the brain will take care of, I can help you move away from thinking everything is your job, because the brain can help you do these things. All right, so the first note I played for you was a middle C. And your body, when you took the breath in, sort of established a sort of a standard space inside the mouth. It wasn't any big deal. And then as soon as I played the octave up on that octave up C, the brain said, oh yeah, no. I'm not going to be able, like Morris, I'm not going to be able to do that note if I maintain that space. Now, for those that didn't feel it, you didn't feel the change that happened in this space in the mouth. It may be that you may not be internally kinesthetic. All right. So Margaret, you work with kinesthetics a lot, right? With the body kind of healing modalities you're working with. So some people are externally kinesthetic. They can feel things outside. But as soon as I take you inside your body and we try to identify some musculature, for some people it's hard. So when I developed the magic head and the visual model, it started to turn on some lights like, oh yeah, I can feel that. I can notice that. All right. So that's why I do this. So passaggio, let me just address it real quick before I go on to the candle flame. So in passaggio, Margaret, in the transitional areas, and women have at least 2, and depending on how high you go, there's 3. There are these transitions that are between what we call the registers. So most of us know about like chest voice and head voice, right? And then how many have felt like I've got a break? And it's somewhere in the middle of that. Here we have a gentleman joining us. This is Glenn. He's another student, so he's been here before. So this idea of a 2-part system and the, he's muted. This idea that there's a break in the middle. What happens in the 2-part system is that we take a lot of weight and pressure, hi Glenn, all the way up the track, and then we get to a point where the body can't handle the weight. There's too much pressure, and suddenly we flip. And when we flip, it's like we go into what we'll call sort of a slightly disembodied sound. It will have a different quality to it that will be like, it might be breathier, it might feel weaker. It's like that, okay? That's caused by a 2-part system in the mind, all right? Bel Canto uses a 3-part system. There's a chest register, there's a middle register, and there's a head register. And between all of those, there are 2 passaggios or transitions. So depending, Margaret, on where you are in your range, this is how I've kind of helped clarify these transitions and how they feel. If you're going higher and you're getting up towards the C I just played, this one, the higher one, that's called second passaggio.
So we're muted.
Yeah, you're muted,
Yeah.
Glenn, for right now, because I'm just going to record. You'll be able to unmute yourself as we ask questions. So you've missed a little bit, Glenn, but you'll be able to catch that up when you come back and watch the video. So when you're going to second passaggio and you're going higher into your range, that's where you'll feel that one. Like Sharon, in the lead line, if you're singing lead in anything like in a cappella group, you will feel second passaggio on the ascending line. It'll feel like, oh, I don't want to go much higher than this. And then if you are a lower voice, if you're singing like Maura sings in the what we call the bass register for female voices, if you in barbershop, if you're on the descending line from middle register to chest voice, you have to go up to a higher note and then come back down. You will feel the passaggio on the transition back down to chest voice. And leads will feel it as well. So leads will feel both. Baritones that are singing will feel both. Sopranos will feel the second passaggio more unless they are being asked to go down below middle C, and then they'll feel that lower one on the descending line. So they behave differently, but fundamentally they are caused by the actual vocal fold structure changing. The vocal folds go to a thinner position in those transitions. And now if you blow a hurricane force wind at them, they cannot hold. And now you will lose control in the transitions. That's why those are so delicate. So if you're used to more aggressive air mechanics, or you feel that starting to happen and you add more force and then you got nothing, that's why. The air pressure is actually blowing them open. Okay, at least is this starting to make sense for people? So for me, part of what I feel my education is vocal fold function. How are we stabilizing these little teeny tiny little musculature cartilage pieces, and how are we sustaining them in this position where we don't blow them open? Okay, it's a little bit of an anomaly because you can't see them. The only time you can feel them is when it's right. You cannot feel them you can't feel them when it's right. You can feel them when it's wrong. It's just the opposite of what I just said. So if you're having difficulty, you're feeling them. If you feel tension here, you're feeling them. You're feeling them get irritated with you. You're feeling that pressure come up into the throat because that air pressure pushing up against them is forcing them out of their optimal position for making sound. That's it. It's literally like, so I'm going to show you on my throat just so you can see it. When I got this sort of lucky cage, if I lower the vocal folds, you'll see the cage. Right here. And they're housed in a cage. Nothing ever touches them. No food, no water, nothing touches them. That's why if you choke, a piece of food got down into that cage, and that's why the Heimlich maneuver has to be done to pop it out. If you're drinking something and you inadvertently inhale or something while you're drinking and water touches them, you cough violently, and you cough violently for a while because they don't like having anything touch them. Okay, so dairy, all the things we've got about, I can't sing if I eat dairy or ice cream. You're like, well, no ice cream's touching them. You can eat ice cream, but you're going to feel it in your throat, So it's like, just know that they're protected. That's the big piece, okay? Any questions about this with the vocal folds? Because I'm going to leave them for now. Yeah, Diane, go ahead. You can come off mute. Should be that lower left corner of your Zoom screen if you just click on the microphone button. You see if you look down at the bottom of your screen, is it not letting you? Okay. Wait, there you are.
I had a header that was covering my mute button. There was a header.
Got it.
So is it then also causing irritation if you feel the vocal cords when you're singing with vibrato, even if you don't feel like if you're singing very quietly, maybe not feeling like you're forcing a lot of air, but you're singing with vibrato. Is that
vibrato? I think here's the thing about vibrato. In the world of a cappella, we're asking singers to not sing with vibrato because of the tuning.
Right.
It will impact the tuning. But, you know, if you've ever listened to Barbara Streisand, you know, memories. She would use vibrato like salt and pepper, you know, like you can use it and you can, but you can control it from an artistic place as opposed to the vibrato showing up in the sound that you can't control. For me, that's the vibrato that we have to be concerned with, is when the air pressure is so great that you've got vibrato and you can't stop it. Okay, so, but vibrato in and of itself can be a side effect of just your natural singing voice. It can just be a natural thing happening, but it is typically happening because of thrust, that there's air force going through the cords at a level they cannot control. All right, so what happens in this work is we get a stability on the folds that changes that. So let's go to, oh yeah, go ahead, Maura.
Something I've noticed is that I can sometimes have like a buzzy kind of airy sound. Is that the
Similar?
Yeah, it's like too much thrust maybe, or
Too much pressure. I would say that if it's sort of a consistent kind of feeling, you know, it's not like an intermittent thing, then chances are the air pressure comes into the body, right? You've got that pressure below, and when you start to pressurize the vocal folds or pressurize upward, you can get that kind of inability to control their function that can feel like that. If you hear air in your sound, they are compromised. It's like that. It's like these are ways you can just tell if you're singing something like, all right, for how many of you are higher? So, and I know Glenn. Hi, Glenn, and you have a friend with you. I see him sort of in the background. Who have you got with you tonight? You can come off mute.
Oh, I'm sorry.
There
Yeah,
you go.
he's the director of my chorus, and
Oh.
we just had a meeting, and I was running after the meeting. I said, I've got a Zoom meeting with Debra. You want to come by and have a drink and watch our? So
Yeah. Well, you may feel free to come into the picture frame if you like. What's your name?
Josh Nieves.
Josh. Hi, Josh. Yeah,
there
feel
you-
free to. Hi, Josh. Welcome to a room full of gals. But I think pretty much now, Margaret, do you sing are you singing in a chorus right now or no?
No, not at the moment.
Not at the moment. So Margaret's, everybody else here is singing in the barbershop craft. Yeah. Okay, cool. So I'm gonna mute you again. All right.
Debra, can
And
I ask
yes,
a question?
absolutely, Margaret.
When you talked about the woman's vocal folds, how are the men's different?
They're 3/4 of an inch long and 1 fingernail's width wide. So, guys, I was saying, so for gals, their vocal folds are a 1/2 inch long and a fingernail's width wide. And for guys, it's typically about 3/4 of an inch long and a fingernail's width wide. And that every note is sung is on that 3/4 or 1/2 inch. I think that's the piece for the brain to start to realize that when we're trying to control an instrument that's essentially functioning this way in our throat, you know, sort of air below, tone above, that the mechanism itself, the movement that the mechanism requires to make those tones is infinitesimal. And so a bel canto trained singer is trained to understand that the brain is responsible for their function, not the constant overpressurization of air. And that the air is actually interfering with their ability to do their job. Okay, so it's a fun conversation. So I'm sorry, guys, that you kind of missed the front edge of this, but we'll just keep going. And like I said, you'll be able to go back and watch the beginning. So this is a key piece, all right? So Pavarotti and his training of how he learned to control his air. Now, you all know who he was. Pretty famous opera singer, yes? All right, so how many know how he was trained in terms of the control of the air? Okay, so what I'm going to say is that there was a candle involved, and it was put 2 inches away from his mouth, and then he was asked to do or not do something. Okay, so if you already know the answer, don't. If you've been with me and you know the answer, don't answer. But what if you have never been asked that question? What would you suspect the teacher would say to do or not to do? Anybody? All right, so Diane, you go first. Let's see what you got.
Don't blow the candle out when you're
Okay, so
singing.
that's the don't that so that would be one, don't blow the candle out. Some people might say, well, blow the candle out because it's so close to the mouth. And I'm going to say it's even worse. It's don't bend, move, or flicker the flame. Okay, so we're just going to play a game. And Glenn, you and Josh can just come up whatever song is in your head that you can the two of you can sing together. So I'm going to have you take a hand and just put it right in front of the mouth, like 2 inches away. All right. And don't hold it too far because you're like, oh, I want to hit it. So hold it close and just sing like you normally sing. And let's notice what happens. All right. So here we go. Okay, bravo. So you may have noticed that you have sort of a cushion of air. There's sort of a feeling of air that's on the hand, a cushion. And how many notice that when you hit certain consonants, certain plosives, fricatives, certain ones, you would get like a pulse of that air on the hand. All right, that would do it. Now, I'm going to walk the guys through that one exercise that we did, ladies, before they jumped on, because then we can play this game. So we'll just do this again. So I'm going to play 2 notes, guys. And all I want you to do is I'm going to play the note. I want you to breathe in through the mouth to set the inner space, but don't sing the note. You're just setting a space, release, and then I'll play a second note and you'll do the same thing. Okay, so here's the first note. Probably you just kind of breathe in through the mouth. Okay, release. Now breathe in and prepare as if you're going to have to sing this note. Uh-huh. Okay, so now I saw it on your faces, so I'm going to ask the guys since the ladies already went through this. So Glenn, you can unmute. So what did you notice between note number 1 and note number 2?
I noticed that the back of my throat became larger. I think even my jaw dropped more for the high one than I was for the low one. It just,
Yep.
I didn't think it automatically did it.
Right, because the brain is brilliant. Okay, so this is what, it's as I was telling the gals earlier, I'm on a mission. I'm on a mission from God. All right, so because I'm trying to help people understand that when they're struggling with something in their singing, it's not personal. Mm-hmm. It's not because they're not a good singer. It's because something in the body has them doing something that's working against themselves. So the magic head, this first space I'll draw is basically the middle C that I played. The body creates sort of an average space, no big deal. And then I play C up the octave and boom, the brain goes, well, I am not going to be able to sing that note if I don't give myself more preparedness or more room. And so you'll get an automatic response. But what's interesting, I'm going to play 2 more notes for you all, is that the brain knows the exact specification of internal space required for every note you sing. So I'm going to play 2 more notes just randomly. Okay, so here's another one. Just breathe in for that. And then breathe in for this one. And now do one more. And you can if you're internally kinesthetic, you're feeling the inside space adjust for the notes. So as because more is a bass, and anybody else have a lower part that they're singing when they're singing in this world? Okay, so I will address when the brain is not brilliant, because there is one moment when the brain is not brilliant. But the brain typically, as you are ascending, if you're going in the direction of up, your brain will actually adjust for the notes. So what we're going to do is we're going to play a game with that candle flame idea, all right? So what I want you to do is, in your mind's eye, whatever song you were singing, kind of go to a higher note in that range that you're dealing with. And I want you to set the inner space. So you're going to basically create a bigger little balloon inside your mouth for me. Sort of like an open feeling, all right? And I'm going to have you put your hand here and sing again and see what you notice when you maintain more of an internal space that's bigger. Okay, so here we go. So you're opening up. Put the hand here. All right, now sing, but maintain this internal feeling. Go. And if you need to breathe, just open the space up. Awesome. Okay, what did you notice? What was different between that one and having no preparation in the space? What, anybody notice something having to do with this? Yeah, Diane. Yeah, you'll have to still,
I
yeah,
felt
there you go.
Sorry, I think I was unmuted.
Yep.
Gosh, I hope I wasn't singing unmuted.
No, you weren't. You were fine.
It felt more relaxed this time.
Yes, this is going to be interesting for you. Okay. It felt more relaxed. What we just caused is something called back pressure. And we started to open the instrument to controlling the air differently. And when you did you happen to notice you had less force on your hand while you were singing? You may not have noticed. Sharon, you noticed that. I can see your head shaking. So you noticed that there was less of an impact to the hand when the internal space of the mouth was more in a state of preparedness. All right, Josh, you noticed that. So basically, what Bel Canto, I mean, I'm simplifying some of this because I am trying to help amateur singers get higher level results. But the bottom line in Bel Canto is that we are opening to a more internally spacious, poised, buoyant, open space all the time, as if we're fully prepared on every phrase for our highest notes. We're living in the space of that internal suspension. We're not collapsing and kind of micromanaging ourselves so much where as a matter of fact, the inside of my head, I joke and say, in the inside of my head, even when I'm talking to you, feels like Barbie. I'm like, wow, a lot of room in there. Woo! And I'm not so marshmallowy internally. I'm much more stable. Facially is another piece that I want to give you all tonight, even though it's not directly related to the air mechanics. It is something structurally that helps us maintain more control of our air mechanics, all right? So I'm going to go on to this next piece here. So I want to just talk about the rib cage piece and how the ribs are interacting with these vocal folds, because that kind of ties in, okay, what's the objective here? And then what I'll do is I'm going to walk you through a couple more exercises. Well, I've got like 4 more exercises that I want to take you through tonight so that you have some discovery places, all right, in ways that you can start to shift how you're thinking about your air mechanics. And then after tonight, for the reinforcement and the follow-up, I will, when I send out the video to you, I will send also a couple of videos from my YouTube channel that will reinforce the mechanics in a little bit of a deeper dive on a couple of the points so that you have something to kind of dig into a little bit as you're becoming curious about these mechanics, all right? And I'll say that at this point while I'm thinking about it, that I'm about to launch a new online platform for my work. This is the first time my work will be integrated into one space with a community consciousness. And I'm thrilled. I've got a young gal in Alaska that is partnering with me to create this space. So there's going to be a whole nother room, if you will, that's going to have a little bit more of a private community feel, where there'll be all of my resources available to people at different levels, like these kind of group classes for sure, but also free stuff and the videos that are up online. I'll be putting them there as well. So let's talk about the rib cage for a sample. And because the guys weren't here, let's just do this one thing. So everybody exhale and breathe in through the nose. And release. And I'm going to give you the first exercise, all right? I'm going to have you do that again. Breathe in through the nose. And suspend. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and release. And do that again. Breathe in. And suspend. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and release. And one more time. Suspend. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and release. Okay, that is the first exercise that my Bel Canto master teacher ever gave me. And what it's designed for, it's like an isometric. Our rib cage in our life is used to opening on the inhale and collapsing, and opening on the inhale and collapsing, and opening on the inhale and collapsing, all right? And then when we're used to bigger breath mechanics, all right, from the operatic schools, whether it's the Italian operatic school where you're breathing more towards the diaphragm and opening up, or it's the lower one, which is the Germanic school, if you're breathing all the way to the pelvic floor, now you're in the land of Wagner, which is really big, heavy opera. And the reality is singers sing with all three of these schools, the Bel Canto school, the current Italian school, and then the Germanic school. But the reality is those three schools are fundamentally for different things. And most of the world, the singers I see in the world of a cappella are using Puccini Verdi technique. They're using the diaphragmatic idea around the waistline, with the exception that we've learned that our objective is to become a toothpaste tube and to squeeze that air out of the body. Pavarotti would never have squeezed anything out of his body. And if you go back to early Pavarotti, I'm telling you, it's well worth it to go find a YouTube video of him. He opens up this instrument, sustains himself like a cello or a bass. And he just opens up that body, holds it still, and this amazing sound comes flying out of him absolutely free and clear, especially when he was younger. As he got older and his mechanics got a little bit less easy for him, and the weight of the voice, starts to push on you, he lost some of that. But when he was young, it's ridiculously amazing and impressive. Huge sound, no air impact, no audible breath. Okay? So that exercise, if you do this 3 times a day, you just breathe in through the nose, expand the ribs, hold it for a count of 8, release gently, do it again, 3 times a day. For 3 weeks, you'll start to retrain your neural pathways of your brain to open and suspend a bit while you're singing so that you aren't forcing air out of the body. It's a much more natural, suspended state, which will feel much more like it does when you talk. It's just we're going to give it a bit more breadth, all right? And if you remember back to the beginning when I said that the vocal fold's primary function is to save your life, where we connect the dots and how do these guys figure this out? The emergency systems of the body, if we were at risk of drowning, hopefully you would have taken a breath before you were in the position. Your body would hold still. It would literally just not let go in the hopes that water would not go down into the airway. You would literally just be holding your breath. What they figured out is that if you did that in a way, not in a way where you're like you're in an emergency, but like you're in a suspended state, you've just opened up and suspended, you can trigger the rib cage to reinforce vocal fold closure. And if you do, your vocal folds start functioning at an incredibly high level of efficiency without you pushing them. The brain now runs it. You hear the notes in your head, you activate. And I'm going to draw this for you because this will help you understand this a little bit, but we are playing a different game. So if we're on the magic head, here's your vocal cords. What we're used to, air goes in, air comes up, sound goes out. Simple, right? Just a simple model, airflow model. That air comes up and makes magic somehow and escapes. And then we, in many cases, if we've been learning from aggressive principles in the world, and in barbershop, they have had aggressive principles at many, many points in their history. It would be to the exit sign. You were trying to push your air across the room. And the poor little vocal folds that are down here trying to stay closed, it's like a little guy on a bicycle, like trying to go really fast, right? And manage this air, right? And so you end up with a lot of vocal anomalies, and you end up with tuning issues, and you end up with collapsed sound, and you end up with like you go to sing your first chord. Josh will appreciate this. Okay, everybody, we're gonna take that breath in, and we're gonna get ready to sing the first chord. And how many times is the first chord not in tune? Right? And that's because the air pressure is so great below the vocal folds. People are tanking up so big that the vocal folds won't function on the first couple notes. It takes them a second to recover, and then they're back in again. But that first chord, and now if you're in a competition and you're doing that, your score, they judged you within the first chord. Okay, so suffice it to say, that doesn't happen in Bel Canto. You have tuning. So what's different? All right. First thing that goes away in this work is the consciousness of out. There's no propulsion. There's no force. We're going to do something different. I'm going to say the big one, the brain squeeze, is this one. There's also no objective of upward thrust of air. There's no thrust. So, okay, well then how's that going to work? How am I going to be heard? You've got these beautiful resonation spaces. Inside your mouth is a resonating space. Inside your face is a resonating space. And now what's going to happen, you all, and we're going to try to trigger this in these next couple exercises. As you articulate, these would be vowels back here and back consonants. This is your pharyngeal wall. And this is a little bit of a deeper dive. So this is where, like I said, the videos I'll send, you can dive into these things on your own. We are going to precisely articulate. And as we do, I think they just put the big P there, precisely articulate, we are going to trigger the tone simultaneously as we articulate. It's going to happen. It's as if we're going to control the folds from above the folds instead of below the folds. We're not telling them what to do with air. We're stabilizing the air gently underneath them, which they love. And now we're going to trigger them to function at a very high level of efficiency. And that's why Bel Canto singers can go like bats out of hell for 16 measures on one breath and be completely accurate to the half step the whole time. Because they're not trying to manipulate their folds. They're hearing it and letting the brain drive the whole ship. So we're driving from the software, driving from the interp, driving from the artistry. Okay. So that was a lot. That will not make sense to you with the other mechanics you're used to at this moment. But we're just going to try a couple other exercises and let's see what you notice, all right? So if you're able to stand, I'll have you stand and I'm going to have you go, we're going to go diva stance for a second to reinforce these ribs just to see what happens. Okay, so you're basically just going to shoulders down. I'm going to ask you to put the hands right in front of the sternum, and then go ahead and, for purposes of just feeling this, breathe in through the nose first. And now pull your hands in opposition, like hook them and pull them. Bravo. And how many, you can feel the little tiny engagement here. Everybody can feel that? Okay, now, what I want you to do is now you can breathe in through the mouth, but I want you to pull, after you breathe in, pull the hands and hold that rib cage steady while you sing a phrase. Okay, so here we go. And sing. And when you have to breathe, just breathe in and pull them again. Bravo, bravo. Okay, good. So what did you notice? Kathy, what did you notice as you were singing in the diva stance?
I have to practice.
Yeah. But what were you aware of, even if it was just for a little bit? When you held more still.
Yeah, I was trying. I think I needed to practice it a little more. I was thinking I wasn't, I don't know. I was trying to get it, but
the body was a little confused. Probably, because suddenly your abdominals they weren't able to do what they did before.
Right.
The abdominals were not able to do their movement.
Right.
Right.
That's
So, but what I want you to, so that's it. You absolutely, you can practice. Okay. And I'm going to do a couple more exercises. So one of these others might work better for you. So if it doesn't work, just let it go. There's other ways to get to the same result. So anybody else notice anything when you stabilize? Josh, what did you notice when you stabilized your ribs?
One thing I noticed, if I felt like I had a lot more air, like I wasn't using as much. I felt like normally where I would take a breath, I said, I think I could just continue on to the next phrase. And
I know. I'm telling you, it's mind blowing. It is interesting, right? So what the rib cage expansion is doing in that, did somebody else want to just share what they noticed as you were doing it before I go into this? So the rib cage, when it's reinforced like that, is reinforcing this vocal fold closure piece, all right? And the vocal folds typically are in a closed position, all right? So they're always basically ready to make high level tone. When we take in big breaths, they will be over pressurized and you'll start to lose air more radically. So you'll feel that loss of air. You'll feel like, oh, I've got to tank up again, or I've got to get another breath in because I'm not going to have enough to do my job. But when you add this rib stability piece into the equation, suddenly you're running on top of what we call subglottal air pressure. The air is very gently suspended below the folds. And so, yes, you're leaking it. You will need to breathe, but it's not as aggressive. It doesn't feel so desperate for singers that they have to, oh my God, I'm out of air. Or like Sharon, I've lost it in the middle of the phrase. I can't get back in fast enough, because when you take a big breath, it requires a lot of energy to inhale. Yeah. So, by the way, if anyone has anyone in their life in the medical profession, this is interesting. I have a physician on my risers now who is a pediatric, preemie pediatric physician, all right? And she was talking to me, so I'm going to draw this map she drew me. So what she said, the other thing that's happening is because of the aggressive air mechanics, our body doesn't breathe that way naturally. We don't exhale all of our air while we're talking. We don't ever like, I'm gonna get all my air out before I take, and then breathe in these big breaths and take it, and I'm gonna breathe in, I'm gonna push all my air out. Okay. Or my favorite is, let's get rid of the bad air. Like, all right, when are you talking to somebody? Wait. Needed to get rid of my bad air. We never do this. Okay. So these are not natural function things. They can be feelings we have associated with over breathing. When we breathe too much, that stacking, some people will say, I'm stacking my air. I got to get rid of my air. It's because the breaths have been so big that the body can't function on that level of capacity. So I'm going to draw this for you. Volume versus pressure. All right. So what she was saying, which I thought this is a good visual for you all, is with preemies, when they're first born, their lungs don't want to open, right? They don't have the development place, so they basically can't get a full breath. So that's why the CPAP machines or in the incubators, they literally are now just gently forcing air into the lungs and keeping the vocal folds open, keeping that air pressure constant on the in to develop the lungs. So on the inhalation for a normal person, it sort of looks like this to the top of the breath and then back down. There's a point in this process of breathing right here that's the suspension. And when we talk, we live in the suspended state. We never really fully exhale all the air. We're kind of living in this place where, Margaret, is this making sense to you? So what these guys figured out 200 plus years ago is that if we lived in a more suspended space, which we do very easily by just becoming more conscious of that open feeling inside the mouth, like I'm completely open in here instead of constantly collapsing. I'm more ready all the time. Our breath mechanics are never fully collapsing. And so when we breathe in Bel Canto with this space, all I do is pull backwards about an inch and the air goes in super gently, super quietly, and super, Sharon, super fast. So if you do get in trouble in the middle of a phrase, it doesn't matter. You can literally just pull back, and that sip of air that will cause you to feel full again goes in lickety split, and now you've got what you need, but nobody noticed you took the breath because there was no sound. It wasn't aggressive. It didn't throw off the tempo. It just literally, you just got what you needed. So you always have the ability to have an emergency breath, but they're super efficient when you have them. Okay. So I want to show you something called the alignment exercise, because this is the latest and greatest from me. And I will be sending a video to follow up on this one. And then we're going to do an exercise together, the one that will blow your mind. Okay, so I'm going to have you, I think you're going to need to stand up for this just so you can feel it more efficiently. So what I'm going to ask you to do is just exhale all your air gently. And I'm always like gentle on the exhale, gentle on the inhale. So gentle out. And just go ahead and breathe in through your nose. Bravo. And as you breathe in through the nose, do you happen to notice, do it again, exhale again. Breathe in through the nose again. Feel how that breath wants to pull you more upright into posture. How many can feel that? You just do a sign. Yep, you feel that postural alignment. Okay, bravo. So now exhale for me. I want you to stabilize your belly button. Just like become mindful of it and hold it still. And now take your breath in. And you notice it starts to pull you towards the alignment and your rib cage starts to open more sideways. Okay? So exhale again. This one's maybe a little bit hard to feel if you're brand new to this feeling, but let's just try it again. So you're going to exhale again. Pull the belly button in just a little bit. Not tight, but just stable. Now take a breath in through the mouth. Bravo, Josh, I saw it. You feel it. It's like the chest opens up. You feel more expanded sideways as opposed to maybe what you might be used to if you're doing more belly mechanics where you're feeling more abdominal activity. Okay, so now I'm going to challenge you all. We're going to sing again. I'm going to set you up for it. So get the song in your mind. And what I'm going to ask you to do is you're going to exhale, belly button in, breathe in through the mouth, and then I'm going to have you start singing. And all I want you to notice is keeping your belly button stable across as much of the song as you sing, even when you breathe. All right, so what we're going to do is try to stabilize and neutralize your abdominals, okay? So exhale again. Let's just see what happens. Belly button in. Take that gentle breath in. And now just start singing. Keep the belly button still. Okay, bravo. Okay, bravo. Go ahead and have a seat. All right, so what were some of the things you noticed? What did you notice? Josh, what did you notice? Because I'm assuming you are used to breathing with a bigger breath.
Yes, I've also, I've taken a lot of classically trained lessons in college and such.
Yep.
And studied music and all of that. And
yep.
Well, and so I'm very familiar with the whole concept of the whole breathing from the bottom and kind of letting it flow out.
Yep.
This I'm finding very interesting because I feel less pressure pushing against. I really don't feel like any pressure. And yet, as I feel, as I'm singing, I'm feeling that there's still so much air I can use that I'm combining phrases that normally I take breaths on. It's very interesting.
It's very interesting. We've just basically turned you into a highly efficient instrument. So it's like Bel Canto changes the singer into an optimal acoustic resonating instrument that expands and activates sound with no force. So you don't feel the pressure in the throat. You feel like you have more air. And for contemporary styles of music, it's a way to get the instrument to function at a higher level of efficiency with less pressure on force on the vocal folds. So, okay, good observation. Okay, somebody else. What else did you notice? Maura, how did it feel tonight with just a little bit of that stability? You've been doing it for a little bit.
Yeah, I a little bit less buzziness. I know I mentioned that earlier.
Awesome. A little more clarity.
A little more clarity. Definitely, I'm getting better at not having to remember to do it.
Yeah. Well, and that's what I want to say to Kathy too. Yes, there's a little bit of, it's a minute to kind of go, okay, this is like a major shift of consciousness for most of us, because what we're used to is taking in these bigger breaths and trying to manage our air. And what we're shifting to is we're going to not take in a huge breath, take in a more natural but fully suspended breath. We're going to suspend the body, and we're going to actually let the body control and manage the air. We're not in that game anymore. That's Josh. That's why it's so interesting. It's like you're not doing it, and somehow it's happening, or you're singing and it's free, but I don't quite understand why that happened. There's a lot of confusion in this game for a while. Margaret, when you were just doing that with a little bit more of that abdominal stability again, because we were doing that a little bit the other day, did it feel a little bit better or a little bit more secure?
I found it very interesting pulling in my tummy button to my spine. I found if I imagine pulling it down, it affected my throat differently to if I went up or straight through to my spine.
Oh, interesting. Yes.
And I was playing with this.
The belly button. Well, and that's because you are a healer in the physicality world. Bravo. So which one of those did you feel gave you the most stability and ease? Curiosity.
I felt my throat free and my voice happy to bounce on top because I would breathe out, and the idea of breathing out is down, so I would attach my tummy button down. But when I breathed out and attached it up, it freed this, and I could. It felt very like a little bird. Yeah,
like a little bird, like I'm just singing. Singing. A bird is a really good image. Because if you ever had a songbird near you, like I have one that likes to visit me now, and he'll be across the street and I'm hearing him super clear, but I'm pretty sure he's not trying to get to me. Right? So, and how is that little tiny bird doing that and making that, right? It's physics, not force. He's triggering something in the air that's making something happen. Yes. So
I was also thinking how you said the folds are always closed, always ready.
Always.
So the concept I have grown up with that I have to warm up. What's warming up?
So exactly right. I'm going to be the one that says the vocal folds do not need to warm up. However, there is a purpose to warm-ups. So and especially for those of us that speak English, because the English language causes a lot of weight and collapse to occur, the way that the language works, right? And so tuning issues, Josh, if you've ever noticed, okay, here's a chord, we got the chord, and now they're out. Okay, here we are, now they're out. Okay, that's the collapse of the English language, because every syllable goes down. But if you go to this place of the forward lift is one of the videos I'm going to send you all. It's not directly with the breathing, but it helps because it stabilizes a piece of musculature that helps us open resonation. And this is a primary amplification area for us. So if our faces are open and engaged, the sinus space more buoyantly open, we amplify through our faces. So there's this piece, and that's separate from breathing per se, because it's really just a structural thing, but you have to warm that up because it's not natural. As soon as I have somebody go to forward lift, they're like, that feels completely fake. I'm like, yeah, it is, until you get used to it. So then the second one is the open space on the inside. We have to, for me, my first two warm-up exercises, the humming and then the yayas, are designed to stabilize and warm up structure. But it has nothing to do with the vocal folds. The only thing that you'll find is that when the exercises are easy, the vocal folds are working right. So this is a cool thing. The easier this gets, the more ease you have overall. Yep, go ahead.
Would you define what you mean when you say weight? I think I know what you mean by collapse. Weight, I'm not a bit.
It's associated with collapse. So every voice has a sort of a natural depth to it. Some voices are lighter and some voices are heavier. So if you have a voice that's big and that has more, like they have power. If you think that, okay, if a singer that can open their mouth and like, all right, so I happen to know that Sharon, who's in the upper corner, has a fairly large instrument naturally. We played with it the other day. Sharon would have more weight in that voice that's creating that ability to have that power. All right, this is how Wagnerian singers are discovered, right? Josh, I'm assuming from your presence that you might have a fair amount of size in this instrument when you sing. So I can kind of, and are you a tenor or are you a bass baritone?
I'm more baritone.
Baritone, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so sometimes you can tell by physical body structure to what somebody is. So I would suggest, like Kathy, what voice part do you sing?
I tend to be higher, like soprano.
Yeah. So singing in that, right. So I can look at her and go, yep, I'd anticipate that she had less weight in the voice because of her physical structure. All right. So the thing about the weight in the voice, as my teacher would say, they are the voices that get paid a lot of money typically to sing. However, they're like trains. They want to run, and they have a lot of power behind them, and they're more difficult to control. So if you just think of it like this power wants to come through that sound, the Bel Canto mechanics work for all voice types, but there are ones that will feel like the holding back of the horses is easier, which is what we're doing in this work. And I'm going to just describe it sideways. When I open here and I'm more buoyant internally, I'm now going to reinforce my air mechanics naturally in my body. I create this back pressure. It just happens from my muscles. It's very gentle. I feel nothing, but it's a stability of open, suspended structure. From my perspective, when I sing, I don't have my transitions, passages are gone. There is no, because the mechanics are being stabilized, there is no upward thrust of force. Therefore, there is no vocal fold problem, which is what we were talking about earlier with you with passaggio. Passaggio only gets exacerbated when we do an upward thrust of air pressure. Okay. So this is where this work, again, I love this work, but it's also a little complicated. So if I'm losing you at all, don't worry about it. It's sort of like you're getting the pieces you need, and then you'll have the video to watch, and I'll send you the other videos. And for those that are watching this but weren't here, you'll have all of that as well. So I want to do one more exercise with you before we get off tonight, okay? And this one is essentially just to bust up your brain a little bit, okay? So I call it the one breath, one song exercise. And I'm going to demonstrate it, and then you're going to try it, and then we'll see how you do. There's no test. You're not going to be heard. All right. It's just a game you can play to help reinforce the mechanics of reinforced air mechanics of suspension versus pressure of air out. When we become a toothpaste tube or a bellow, our vocal folds struggle. And that's if we're trying to manage our air, fundamentally, we've already lost the game. If we are managing the suspension of the body, we'll have control of whatever we want to have control over. All right. And then the body is handling the management of air. It doesn't have to be scary, but for some people it is, because air is life and death. And so when we start to talk with folks about air, the reality is some people will panic because they think, well, I have to have air. And I'm like, yes, you do. But you don't want to overbreathe, because if you do, you won't have air. So if I can get a gentler breath in, an inaudible breath in, that also helps. If you become mindful, I'm going to breathe in and it's going to be silent. You'll also notice you have more efficiency on the vocal folds. Okay, again, it's a little scary, more like when we're working, there's these moments I watch her face and I go, okay, it'll be okay. It just takes a little time to discover for yourself what this mechanic process is, all right? All right, so here's this exercise. And I'll tell you how it works before I have you do it. So I'm going to basically pull into alignment. Fa la 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 la. Okay, now we're all gonna do it. Okay, so now here's the trick. Now, because there's a little trick. So when we're going to sing, we will take the breath in. Fa la 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 la. We will collapse the body in order to take a breath. And so we will get the audible breath, because fundamentally we're pushing the air out at the end of the phrase and then trying to open up really fast. All right? What I'm doing is I'm not letting go. I'm like a dog with a bone. So I open up the body. Fa la 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 la. So I'm not leaving my alignment. That's a little bit of that belly button thing I'm going to send you a video on. And I'm not collapsing forward. And I'm definitely not pushing my air out. I'm trusting that my internal, autonomic, involuntary understanding that I've been doing since the day I was born, when it's suspended, is capable of sustaining. And I feel nothing, and I'm never lightheaded, and I'm not running out of breath in phrases. My brain just has to know how long the phrase is, and it will hold the state. Okay, so if you can just remember, you're a cello, you hold still till the phrase is over. Then you take a breath in, and then you're a cello again. That's as simple as it is. Okay, so everybody, I'm gonna make sure you're all muted. I'm muting Kathy. Okay, so you're all muted. You pick your own pitch. I'm gonna just get you in alignment. So exhale for me gently. Breathe towards your back, and go. Bravo, bravo. Okay, so now, okay, good. So how many made it first? How many made it on one breath? You made it, Margaret. That's fantastic. And it felt better, didn't it? Yes, you're going to get this, okay, because you're naturally kinesthetic. That's awesome. Glenn, did you make it on one? Glenn made it. Josh, did you make it? Awesome. And Diane, you made it. All you have to do is take that consciousness that you just did, and your breathing issues are over. They're over. You're just being more mindful of that suspended state. You're just being more mindful of it. You won't ever have to sing a phrase that long. Ever, in any context, okay? So how many had to take an extra breath? You had to take one more breath. Okay, Maura and Kathy. Sharon, did you need to take a couple? I actually can't see you because that's a little dark on your, so you have two breaths. Okay, that's normal. So did you all that took one notice that it happened as you started to go higher? It's where we have a tendency to push air. So as soon as we start to go up the high that we want it, you'll feel it. The pressure will start to build and you'll want to be adding more air in those moments. So just know in those moments, you're just going to feel, okay, I'm sort of like a megaphone. I'm like, okay, I'm going that way. And it's that holding on to the alignment. All right. But if you think of this more like a game, it's not like a test. It's not like you have to get there tomorrow, but just having a bit of this consciousness that in order to breathe easy and easier, we have to breathe easier. We have to be more about a gentle feeling of suspension in the body, an openness that's not over pressurized. If you take too big a breath, you will automatically cause issues for the body. And Kathy, what I'm going to suggest to you is that if you think more like small, short, like fairy breaths, you're going to take little tiny thimble breaths and just do short little phrases, just short little phrases, a half of a phrase. And because sometimes I can feel it in the body. If there's any trauma, if there's any fear, if there's anything going on, if we have doubts about our singing, there's a whole nother piece of this. Then what will happen is our emotional body will get a little triggered by the fact that I'm opening you up all the way and saying, stay open. If you're shy, Sharon, we talked about this, right? I mean, if you're shy or introverted and I go to open you up and have you suspended, it's going to trigger you and the emotional body is going to start fighting. And then you'll also have a bit of a battle. Okay, so just know that you're a complex human being. And that because of that, there are things that the brain is doing to help you. And there's other things in the thought process, if you're trying to push something out of you, that's actually what's causing the problems. All right. So questions, final questions before we finish up. Anybody? Yeah, Glenn.
Okay. I can't see it because I'm not using a mirror, although I should for this. But when I do the forward lift,
Yep.
and my eyebrows naturally go up when I do that, and I feel like without any conscious choice, my soft palate is also going up. Is that possible that could all trigger?
What I will say, and for those of you that we haven't talked about the forward lift yet, I'm going to send you the forward lift video. So the forward lift piece that stabilizes here actually engages a conversational soft palate. So your soft palate is lifted just because you lifted here. It's not hyper engaged. So the distinction I would do for you is basically this. If I'm hyper engaged and I tilt into that soft palate, oh mio babino caro, and I start to get that sort of woofy, weightier sound. In Bel Canto, if I'm lifted in it and I do the same thing, oh mio babino caro, there's no heft to it. There's no weight that I'm carrying with me. So you can lift the eyebrows, but you don't have to lift the eyebrows. The eyebrows is sort of a little bit from the past where they said, okay, lift the eyebrows so you can get that soft palate up. But I'm going to suggest to you that that's almost too high. That you'll start to feel, you will start to feel a lack of control as you go higher, because what we're going to trigger in this work is a more natural ability for the body to control the air mechanics. And if it tilts too much, you don't have that same suspension control. Okay. So just know that, you don't need your eyebrows anymore, but you do need your forward lift. Other questions? Anybody else? Awesome. After you get the video and you process it a little bit, if you do have questions, just email me. There's either something I can answer quickly or I can direct you to one of the videos. And if you would like to be on the list to be notified of this new community site that's going to come together, I think it's going to be really exciting because I've been now teaching these mechanics for 15 years in barbershop. And I've been teaching it for 15 before that to the rest of the world. And there are a lot of people doing this work right now. And so I think that because it's so different, it's helpful to have the support system where you can come in and kind of glean little details periodically. And it is my mission to help bring these mechanics to the world before I'm not here anymore. So please reach out if you have questions. Otherwise, it was great to have you with me tonight. And I hope you all are breathing easier very soon.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Good night, everybody. And Josh, great to meet you. Diane, great to meet you too. Kathy, I'll see you soon. Maura, I'll see you soon. And Margaret, glad you were with us. We'll talk to you soon. Sharon, see you too. All right, bye, everybody.
Bye.
Awesome. So everyone that wasn't with us tonight, I hope that this was helpful to you. I'm going to be sending some videos for the forward lift and something called the point of suspension. That is, how do we reinforce a more prepared internal mouth space on every breath? How do we get to this feeling of ease in a way that's consistent? So, and that becomes the question, is how do I get there and how do I stay there? So it's getting used to a feeling of this sort of opening sensation of opening and then opening and then opening. So if you have questions after you've watched the video or you get them, just feel free to reach out anytime. Ciao bella, and hope you're doing well wherever you are. Bye.